All right, so we're there. Oh, I gotta turn this light on, dang it. All right. Turn that light on.
That's a melt.
I think we got it. Let me.
That's too long. Giving you grief. There it is.
All right, everybody. Hello. We're working. Nooner. Welcome to this Tuesday. I get to sit here with my bride, Kimberly, my partner in crime in life for the last 29 years. And we are talking today about how to balance the demands of parenthood with the needs of your relationship, because you got lots of relationships in life. And this is our number one human relationship. Kim and I say that all the time, but we have 3 kids. And for those of out there, maybe who have young kids, it can get tough, right? I mean, there's all kinds of demands, but this is Kimberly Diane Swain Payne Hoffman. She is the co-host and co-founder of the Kick-Ass Couples Nation podcast. I used all those names because
are not really all my names.
it is her middle name, last name, my middle name, last name. And, you know, if she's in trouble, she gets the whole kit and caboodle. I'll say it one more time so you all. Kimberly Diane Swain Payne Hoffman. So some of those are hers and some are not. So we're glad you're with us.
Thank you for having me on. I think the last time I was on your Nooner, TGW and Nooner, we got cut off.
Oh, we had they were working on internet in our street. We had timeouts 2 times, and we're hoping we have clear sailing today. So we apologize in advance for that. What happened last time, right? That was not fun for sure. A little frustrating, but you know, I kind of want to dive in because Kim, you know, we got Colton Payne joining us. Hey, Coleman. Glad you could join us today. So balancing life, parenthood, and your relationship. What comes first? Is it always that way for couples with kids? Is it choosing? Do you have to pick that you want the relationship to take priority, that kids take priority? So, Kim, it's all about prioritization, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And what you prioritize. So, what is the right order in your mind of who or what comes first?
Well, it's probably different for everyone, but for me personally, I would put God at the top of that list. That would be first and foremost. And then I would put my relationship with my spouse. That would be you. And then it would be my children and my immediate family. So that would be the way that I would prioritize my relationships.
And I agree with that in part. And Kim, one thing I think you agree with, but I want to add a little change there. God is first in my life. And then I would say me, right? Because, you know, I believe in, not that I'm most important, but I know I got to take care of me and I can't sacrifice me, and making sure that I'm getting my needs met so I can be most effective in our relationship. You are next, our family, and everybody else. And, you know, we always like to say at KCN that the married relationship is the number one human relationship. And Kim and I will go out on a limb. Some of you out there might disagree with us, but I think that we both agree that our relationship is more important than our relationship with our kids. Doesn't mean we don't love our kids. One of them might be listening right now. We do love you, but we know that for us to be most effective and show up for our kids, we got to have the divine connection, you know, heaven to earth going on there. And then we got to be committed to each other. So that's really, I think, the fountain of our success and what we found has worked best for us. So I got a question, Kim. Do you think that focus, that prioritization, does it change daily, weekly, monthly, or is it the same? And once it's established, nothing really goes on there?
Well, I think we all like to establish routines, and routines are important, but we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So I feel like it's really easy to be thrown curveballs or just maybe your season is changing in life. So right now there are some people who are listening who are in the thick of it and they have really young kids, and it's really hard to find that work life family balance. And so I believe that it can change often, but we have to be ready to pivot, and we have to really know that if our marriage is our priority, then that's what we have to focus on. And that's what we have to keep as number one.
Yeah, we were there. We have 3 kids, and there was a stage when we had young kids running around, and where they can't do anything without you. They're not feeding, they're not clothing, they're not changing, they're not showering.
Yeah, it's
They're
a
really
lot.
doing nothing themselves, and it does take a lot of your time and effort. But I think a trap that a lot of people fall into is they say, I've got to only focus on my kids. But that relationship, your relationship was around before the kids showed up, right? And I think that one thing you got to remember is that the strength of your relationship is going to dictate how well you show up for your kids. And it's not really all or nothing thinking, right? It's not
Sure.
always the kids, it's not always the spouse. And, you talk about the seasonality and kind of the ebb and flow that happens in any relationship. That's normal. But you don't want to abandon your spouse just because you have needy children, because that relationship's going to help and pour into, I think, your effectiveness everywhere else is kind of what we're
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
And I think developing routines is really important. If you're looking at how are we going to balance our lives, how are we going to balance work with our family, with our kids, if you have a really good, healthy routine in place, then I think that makes you emotionally available and mentally available for your family.
And we're going to talk about that, Kim, because you really have to have a division of duties, don't you? I, I
Absolutely.
I think when one person is the breadwinner, that doesn't mean it's all or nothing with the kids. It's not like, well, hey, I work outside the house, so you've got the home front. That's not
Sure.
really a fair
Sure.
situation, is it?
No, salary does not equal value. And I think that if you're at home with your children 24/7 and you're holding down the home front, that, it's, you need a break from that, right? That's a 24/7 job. And you shouldn't be expected to do all of that on your own. Listen, we're a team, right? And if we're a team, then we're going to work together, we're going to plan together, we're going to practice together, we're going to win and we're going to lose together.
Yeah.
So
I
we've
think
got
one.
to communicate.
Yeah, you do. And I think one of the things I would say is Kim and I, in our own relationship, made the active decision that I was going to work and full time outside the home, and that she was going to work full time in the home. So when people would say, "Does your wife work?" I would say, "Absolutely. She works full time in our home with our children." And I can remember when we had our first child, Olivia, who's 25 now. She was a colicky girl. I mean, man, I'd leave in the morning and she was crying. I'd come home in the evening and she was crying, and Kim would meet me at the door and go,
Here you go.
"Here, you're up," because it was tough, and it was grating on her, and she was worn down, and she was ready for that break. And guys or women, whoever if one of you is working full time outside the home, hey, I've been working all day. It's time for me to take a break. Oh no, man, you got to come home and show up, and you're both tired. But it requires definitely going deep. So, what about fair and balanced sharing, Kim? For your spouse's sake and your children's sake, it's not just about, hey, you got to give your wife a break. And that's why, if you're the breadwinner, or your other spouse, a break when you come home. But what do the kids need?
Well, they have emotional needs just like we do. And I think that just like, um, you know, the child being at home with the mom all day long, they need that break. They need some dad time.
Yeah.
They need to be able to get some of the attention from you and the skills that you have that I can't give them. And so I think that it's just important for their needs and their health to have both spouses participate in their upbringing.
No doubt. You want your kids to really benefit from the strengths that you each bring. And Kim and I have unique things like any other couples out there, right? There are things that are unique to you, but we also have things in common. So it could be either or, and the kids are going to get the same balance, I think, kind of, and the fairness, but your kids need the exposure and the uniqueness that each of you
Absolutely.
bring. And and sharing responsibilities too. It's not up to, one of my biggest pet peeves, and I would never say all men, because I don't think that you can categorically make blanket statements and say all men or all women, right? It just doesn't happen that way. But I would say most men, or a lot of men that I've heard, they go, oh, calendar, that's my wife's job. She plans everything. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if we're available. And the same thing with the kids, that often the person who stays at home full time takes more of the lead in planning those activities with children. And that's okay to take the lead. But I think that really there's got to be strength in that partnership and sharing the responsibility of planning, that both partners and both spouses have to take that lead and contribute to organizing time together.
Yeah, planning and being organized and maybe even making lists, it's really important and it works.
Yeah. And I think that what are each partner's needs and abilities with your children, right? There's probably some things, if it involves instruction and teaching something new, Kim would say that maybe I'm more patient with some of those things. And so there's nothing wrong with taking the lead, but leveraging the abilities with your partner and your children. And I think, the partnership too is the best message you can send your kids as parents, is that mom and dad or both partners are united. Like, the children are not going to divide you. It's not setting one against another. And it's not, well, if I can't make Kim the bad person in our relationship, like, well, that was her decision. And I disagree with that, right? We may have a disagreement, but those are going to be handled in private. And if Kim makes a decision, I want to support her. And I'm going to make sure that I've got her back, because I don't want our kids to think that I'm going to throw mom under the bus or that I'm not supportive of her. We're a united front. And I think we've been in it long enough. I can have a child come to me and say, hey, dad, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And I talked to mom and she said to talk to you. And I'm going to know what Kim's response is going to be. So there's not going to be division. And I have a chance to support her and step up and kind of lean into that a little bit.
Yeah, listen, they're always watching and they're always listening. And I think we've learned, even when your kids get older, being very careful about what you say around them, because if I'm disparaging you in front of them, they're hearing that and they might think that they can kind of sneak in on that and put us sort of pin us up against each other rather than see a united front with us. And so I think we have to be really careful that we always come out as a team and we are always presenting that we have each other's back no matter what.
So we had a question that come in that said, this is from Social with Holly. What should you do when your spouse puts the kids first in front of you? So what do you think about that, Kim? How would you respond to that? And I'll share too.
That's a really great question. And I think that you have to be really careful how you react in that moment. While you might be feeling very hurt and upset, I think that you have to take a step back, take a breath, and then approach that in private. I think you have to have the conversation. I think there's a very positive and right way to communicate it, but in front of the children is not a great idea.
No, because you're pitting yourself against the children when you do that. And I think it is a good question. I would say definitely take it up in private. And I think that two words, I have a post about this that'll be coming out soon. You want to be careful not to use the words always and never. You always or you never, because those are absolutes. And you don't want to use absolutes because they're almost, it's rare that they're completely true one way or the other. And I think that too, making sure, Holly, when you have that conversation, you want to say, I feel, hey, I want to let you know when this happened, this is how it made me feel. Because you're not saying you did this to me and being a victim. You're saying, let me describe to you the circumstance and how it made me feel. And I never want to do anything knowingly that I am going to be hurting, demoralizing, or bringing my wife down, because I love her. And you don't want to do something intentionally that's hurting. So once you make them aware of it, it gives them a chance to step up and go, I wasn't aware, I didn't know, or maybe there was a reason. There are going to be times, certainly, when the kids have to come first because it's a critical or urgent or time-driven need. But then there's also going to be times when you don't have to always do that. So if your spouse's typical pattern is kids are first, then that is something you need to talk about, because if your relationship is solid and sound and really firing, it's going to translate into the safety and security of your children. The greatest gift you can give your kids is a wonderful, loving, safe, and secure relationship. And that means, guess what? I am going to love my wife in front of my kids. I am going to kiss my wife. I'm going to ogle over her. I'm going to tell her how important she is to me, because I am modeling for my kids what it means to be a man, what it means to be a husband, what it means to be a father, and what it means for someone to demonstrate the finer qualities of an established and solid relationship. They're going to model what they see modeled to them.
Yeah. What about arguing in front of them? How do you feel about that? I know that
Mhm.
some people will have full blown arguments in front of their kids, and which I don't agree with at all. But what about disagreements? Do you think that it's healthy for them to see you disagree, and maybe how you might handle a disagreement?
I think it is, Kim. I think that, as long as you're living within the bounds of trust, respect, true love, appreciation, we think we have 14 pillars in our platform. As long as you are not violating any of those things, as long as you are being love and gentle and not in and you're not condemning in
Right.
your language.
Critical. You
If
have to be
I'm
very
I
careful.
don't want to tear you down, certainly. And I wouldn't want to tear you down in private. Tearing down is tearing down. I think your kids need to know that you can have healthy disagreements, have a difference, and that in those situations, it's about understanding, right? We always say there's two viewpoints in every relationship and they're both right. If you feel a certain way, I don't have the right to discount your feelings.
Yeah.
That's not fair. Just like you don't have the right to do that to me either. So, but I think, a lot of people that we talk about in the Kick Ass Couples podcast, they say, my parents never fought.
Yeah.
Well, I bet they did. And I think kids need to know that you can have healthy disagreements and that it doesn't have relationship ending power.
Well, and you can model that healthy behavior so that they can see what a healthy disagreement looks like, and how important it is to have a healthy way that you resolve conflict.
No doubt. You're teaching your kids how to have respectful dialogue.
Exactly.
And parenting and relationships are all about dialogue. So the integrity that you have in those communications reflects the love you have, not just for your spouse, but for your kids as well. Yelling and screaming and losing your temper with your kids isn't acceptable either. And if it's not acceptable in your relationship, it's not acceptable with your kids. And man, they can do some things and they sure know how to push those buttons. And we all lose our cool at times. But yeah, I think it's okay to have those discussions. So, Kim, I think I want to move on to our next key point, which is really making time to connect. If you want to have balance between parenthood and in your relationship, you got to have intentional time to connect. And that means daily, multiple times, right? Throughout the day. It might be phone calls, might be texts. It could be, ideally, hopefully some of that is face to face. So what happens if we're not connecting daily with our spouse, obviously, and our children as well? What should that look like if it's healthy?
Well, if we're going to connect with each other, we have to, like you said, be very intentional about it. And maybe it could be that we spend time together when you come home in the evening before we do anything with kids or before we do anything else. Maybe we're going to go for a walk together. Maybe we're going to sit out on the front porch on the swing. Maybe we're going to have a glass of wine together. But we have to be intentional about setting, maybe it's just 10 or 15 minutes, right? But we have to be intentional about setting that time aside that we can connect with each other, because connecting is going to keep us emotionally attached. If we're not emotionally attached, if we're just kind of going in opposite directions and we're not coming together, then we're going to grow apart.
Yeah, quality communication means you are emotionally connected with your spouse. And when you're not emotionally connected, that is when trouble arises. And I think, Kim, you said you got to have time. We called it couch time when our kids were little. And, man, it didn't mean they didn't come in demand. It was mom, dad, watch, look. And we would turn to them and say, this is our time. We love you, but please don't interrupt our time together. So again, you're modeling what your kids need to see, that mom and dad have time and it doesn't involve kids. And you're also teaching them patience, which is tough when the kids are young, but they're learning that this is a normal habitual practice, that mom and dad sit in the swing and they rock. We had a porch swing and we loved to go sit in that swing. We called it swing time. And we'd get out there, we're outside. The kids would still come up and we'd say, I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait.
Yeah.
Can't,
Or if we had
can't,
babies, we were rocking and
yeah.
talking with the baby in our arms.
Yeah,
So,
but I think it's good for your kids to know that there's time that it's just the two of you, and that's going to be modeled throughout your entire relationship. And then
no doubt.
really, I think kind of the next step, Kim, is having family time, right? In other words, not just you and your partner, but you, your partner, and your kids. That family unit, whether it's a meal together, whether it's a playing a board game or cards, or doing something outside, or going for a bike ride, walking the dogs.
We do all that.
Doing a swim, whatever it might be, time with your kids where you're all together and knowing that you're building the health and the strength and the resiliency of that family unit.
Absolutely.
What about, Kim? How would you answer? A lot of people say, you know what? We've given so much to the kids. I don't have anything left for you, and you're going to have to just honor that and respect that. I'm just too spent with the kids, and I have nothing left for you. What would you respond to someone that made that claim?
Wow. I think that that's not an unusual claim, right? Because we do get caught up in our busy day and we are emotionally, physically, just mentally drained, especially when the kids are really young. And so I think that that's an easy rut to fall into, but I think we have to be very, very careful. Again, it comes back to prioritizing your spouse, creating that space and that time of where you can be together to connect. We have to be very careful. That's such a slippery slope. I think when we do that over and over again, we're inviting trouble into our marriage, and we're inviting our husband to maybe, and it could be the wife. I mean, it could be either one, right? But we're inviting that partner to start having that connection with someone else or somewhere else, period.
Right. Yeah, because if you're
That's
not,
a scary, slippery slope.
connection equals emotion, and emotion is the bind that brings you two together. And if you're not getting it,
We were created for connection. If we're not getting it, you're right. We're going to go somewhere else
yeah,
for it.
people, we're made for connection, and we want to be validated, we want to be heard, and we want to be understood. And the sad truth is, if we're not getting it at home, we're going to look for it in other places. So to a fair proof, and to strengthen and put that wall up around, that hedge of protection around your relationship, it's allowing yourself to have the time to connect. And that needs to happen with the kids. It needs to happen without the kids. Everybody says date nights, and that's true. And date night doesn't mean just dinner and a movie out.
Time away.
It could be time away. And, also kind of, I think that a lot of couples we've talked to in the Kick-Ass Couples podcast, it's not just date night, but they go, one couple we spoke to we have quarterly activities on the calendar where we're away with no kids, whether it's a staycation or a vacation or doing something that is for the relationship. So think about that. It sounds maybe to some of you like a lot, but Kim and I commit to date nights almost every week, at least every 10 days. And
I wouldn't say we get away quarterly, but
we try. We try to have those times, and we've had a few good ones, and we get creative about putting them on the calendar so we get to have the fun and the trysting time to reinvest and go deep with each other. And I think that's critical.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I love in our relationship is that when one of us is down or struggling, I think the other one steps up naturally. So having your partners back when the day or the season demands it. I came out with my first book a little over a year and a half ago, and it involved a lot of traveling and speaking for me around Florida, where I have a lot of great connections and speaking to Rotary clubs and presentations, and it all ended in a book launch. And in that season, my wife stepped up to the plate for me, for us, and for our children. And that was a few weeks. And when she knew it was coming and culminating, we talked about it, we planned on it, and it didn't make it any easier because we planned on it, but she was willing to dedicate her love and support to me so I could have that season. There have been times in our relationship that it's been her time to shine. She was president of the parents club in a 1,200 person school where all three of our kids went at that time, and it was a full-time job for her. Took her away from the home a lot, but I knew about it and I supported her and understood that this was the season, the time for her to shine. So it doesn't mean that it's going to be a year long or a month long or a week long. It could be just a day. One of us isn't feeling well and needs some time to sleep and catch up and communicating those needs. And, I'm a big fan of, one of my favorite question is, what is your number one need right now? And how can I best support you? And I
Yeah.
think that knowing that, if you don't know right now in the season that your partner is in what their number one need is, you got to ask and say, how can I best be supporting you today, right now?
Yeah, it all comes back to communication, honestly, really expressing what your needs are. If you have a season like you did with your book launch that you knew you were going to be busy, it's sitting down and planning what that's going to look like. It's talking about how much that means to you and what I can do to support you, right? We're a team again. And there are people out there that have huge demands with their work. Maybe you're a doctor or surgeon, maybe you're an attorney and you're preparing for a trial and you're working day and night to get ready for this trial. I think it's really important to come back to, though, when that season has sort of calmed down a little bit, it's really important to come back to making your spouse a priority and letting them know how much you appreciated the way they rose up in that time, and showing them that they are the priority, they are important to you, and not just going right back from that season into another season and yet another season.
Yeah, you got to take time out, and it's tough. If anybody on the call today on this KCN Nooner, if you have any questions, type them in the chat. We'd love to try to answer them. If you are wanting to know about how to have better balance and the demands of parenthood and the needs of your relationship, and if you don't get it in here and you're watching this later, you can email us at info@kickasscouplesnation.com, and we will respond and get back with you. And if you're working hard, or you and your partner are working hard, and those times to connect seem difficult, and maybe you're not living in that relationship nirvana that you so desire right now, we're here to help. Go to MatthewPHoffman.com. We have a fantastic new Kick-Ass Couples coaching program. We have Kick-Ass Couples Nation bi-monthly webinars where we do deep dives on key relationship traits and pillars that you've got to have success in that relationship. My wife and I host. If you like what you heard today, you can come listen to us interview masters of relationships. We have a special episode at the Kick-Ass Couples podcast, and we would love to connect with you and share some of what we're doing.
Thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, I love when I get to have my beautiful bride sitting right next to me. She's got a lot of wisdom, a lot of great experience, a lot of grace in everything she does. So we hope that we are grateful that you joined us today for our KCN Nooner. We are live every single Tuesday for 30 minutes talking about questions, ideas, going deep on things that can help you level up in your number one human relationship. So we hope you'll come back and join us again. And there's just one message we want to leave you with.
Happily ever after doesn't just happen. It's on purpose.
So we hope you guys will come back and join us here or on our other platforms soon. Make it a great one.